I'm Anya. I traveled to the coast of Italy, thinking I was helping organize my mother Evelyn's big birthday trip, only to find out I'd been systematically excluded by my own family. They'd given my tasks to someone else, left me out of a special video, and acted like I didn't belong. So, since my name was on all the contracts, I canceled the whole Italian vacation. But this exclusion didn't start in Rome. It's been going on for years. Little silences, weird looks, and secrets I wasn't supposed to know. It makes you wonder how a parent can just erase their own child and how you're supposed to feel when the people who should love you act like you're invisible. The evening air was warm and thick. I stood outside the restaurant, watching my family go in ahead of me, like I wasn't even there. No one turned to acknowledge me, not even Marcus. We were in Rome for Evelyn's 70th, a big event I had planned. The reservations, the flights, the menus, even the flowers. The whole trip was a gift from my company, but apparently, that still wasn't enough for me to even get a seat at the table. I looked at the long table with all the fancy place settings. I didn't see my name. I wasn't shocked. "Honey," Evelyn said when I got closer. Her voice had that sweet tone that could fool anyone into thinking she was nice. "Maybe you're tired. You don't have to stay for the whole dinner." It was one of those sentences that sounds polite but really means leave. Marcus coughed, barely looking up. "Maybe they just miscounted," he said without much enthusiasm. His arm brushed against Giselle, his new girlfriend. She glanced up quickly, blinked, and then looked away. "Miscounted? You don't miscount your own daughter at a table of 13. I looked again. Every place card was perfectly arranged, every napkin folded just right, every wine glass filled. The table was perfect. It always was when I planned it. But tonight, there was one person missing on purpose. I nodded slightly and walked away before I broke down. In the hallway near the kitchen, I stopped. I didn't know if I needed to breathe or scream. Then a server, Dario, I think his name was, came up to me, looking hesitant. "Miss Hayes," he lowered his voice, looking around. "Your name was on the seating chart this morning. I saw it myself. But this afternoon, a new version came in. Your name was taken off." His apology seemed rehearsed, like he didn't expect me to be surprised. And I wasn't, not really. I nodded again, whispered, "Thank you," and turned to look at myself in the mirror by the wine cabinet. I looked at the woman in the mirror, hair perfect, dress perfect, makeup just right. Everything about me was designed to make me look like I belonged, and still, no seat. This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. My mother had been slowly cutting me out for years. When I was 11, she invited all my cousins to a play in Milan for Christmas, but not me. Her excuse was, "You were sick, honey." But I wasn't. I had a spelling bee. At 17, she told me Marcus wasn't the right guy for me. At 29, she made sure the wedding photos focused more on her than me. I was always just a little out of focus. And now, at 38, here we were again. Still on the outside. I walked back toward the dining area. The sound of glasses and laughter was like a low, mean hum. They were in the middle of a toast. Evelyn raised her glass and smiled like she was the queen of her own fairy tale. I stood at the edge of the table, behind Marcus. He didn't turn around. I waited until the laughter died down, until it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Looks like I'm not family," I said, clearly but not loudly. 12 heads turned. Giselle blinked. Evelyn's smile faltered. Marcus's shoulder got tense. It was a moment they weren't prepared for. No one reached out to me. No one stood up. No one said my name. I turned and left. As I walked past the servers, one of them nodded at me, not with pity, but with understanding. And that was the nicest thing anyone had done for me all night. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just got on the elevator alone, in the dress I'd paid for a dinner I wasn't supposed to be at. And when the doors closed, I let the silence take over. "Looks like I'm not family," I said, as steady as could be, for a seat I was never meant to have. I didn't cry when I left, but I also didn't sleep. My suite at the Grand Azure Hotel was just as perfect as I'd planned it, elegant details, great views of the city, a big bed made perfectly. But it felt like a cage. I stood on the balcony, watching the city lights. In my mind, I kept replaying Evelyn's words, "Maybe you're tired, honey." That's what you say when you've already decided someone doesn't belong. I got out my tablet, opened the schedule, and checked every detail. My name was on everything: contracts, emails from my staff. I had done all the work for this trip. But somehow, I was invisible. The next morning, a thin envelope was slipped under my door, fancy cream-colored paper. It was the schedule for the week's press events, interviews, photos, the press walk at the big party. My name wasn't on it, not even as the event organizer. Giselle's name was there twice. Once as Evelyn's partner and again as the media contact. I called my publicist, Dario, right away. He answered quickly, sounding nervous. Anya, listen, he paused. Evelyn said you weren't interested in the press stuff, that you wanted to stay behind the scenes this time. That's what I was told. I assumed you agreed. She said I was feeling overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, that was a new one. Last month, she called me controlling. Last year, it was too ambitious. I didn't argue. I just thanked him and hung up. Later that day, I went to the conference room to check the lighting for the birthday event. Giselle was already there, practicing her speech in front of a small video crew. She looked great, acting like she was supposed to be there. I asked the coordinator for the speech notes. He gave me a folder labeled Giselle Keynote. Evelyn walked in as I opened it. Oh, Anya, she said, smiling like it was all normal. I thought we talked about this. Giselle is doing the toast this year. She has a fresh perspective, something that connects with younger people. You know how the press loves that. I don't remember nodding, but I must have. That's what people like her count on, you being stunned long enough for them to move on. I left and went back to my room, where I took out my old journal. On a blank page, I wrote, "They don't just want me gone. They want me forgotten." Then I underlined it. A memory popped up. I was 8. Evelyn had helped organize a school show. I had the opening speech, a short poem about winter. The night before, she told me, "I gave your part to Jenny. You're strong enough to handle it." She's not. I smiled like I always did. That's what good daughters do. Until they don't. I stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "You're not 8 anymore." And I meant it. The situation had changed, but the people hadn't. Evelyn was still in charge. Giselle was happy to play along. Marcus stayed out of it enough to feel okay about it. But I was done waiting for a seat. If they were changing the family story, they'd soon find out I was the one holding the pen. I stayed quiet, but I didn't disappear. That evening, I got to the hotel ballroom early. The lights were just on, and the room smelled like it had just been cleaned. Tech people were setting up lights. There were cables and screens everywhere. I moved through the room like I belonged there. Because I did. I had created it. Every detail had my touch, even if no one else could see it. Dario saw me and nodded. "We're loading the final video. Want to see it?" I said yes and crossed my arms, trying to look professional but wanting to see what would happen. The screen lit up. The first images were old videos Evelyn had transferred years ago. There I was, as a kid, holding her hand at an event. Then there were pictures of me on a pony, school photos, and birthday parties. My throat tightened, not because I was feeling sentimental, but because I knew what was coming. And I was right. Halfway through, I disappeared. The rest of the video was about Evelyn's recent successes, awards, interviews, photos. In every shot, there was Giselle, shaking hands with charity people, laughing with Evelyn, getting flowers at a fashion show. Evelyn's voice played over it, talking about how important legacy is and who you trust to carry it on. I didn't even blink. Instead, I asked the tech guy for the rundown of the slideshow. He gave it to me, a checklist, color-coded. Part 1, Evelyn's early days. Part 2, Evelyn and her new favorite. Part 3, Evelyn's speech, Giselle Live. There was no Part 4. No mention of me, not even as the person who made it happen. This wasn't a tribute. It was a handover. I took a photo of the checklist with my phone from 2 angles, without the flash. "You okay?" Dario asked, trying to sound casual. "I'm fine," I said. "Just making sure we're on schedule." He gave me a look that people give you when they know something's wrong but don't want to say it. Then he went back to the monitors. I walked out of the ballroom slowly thinking. Back in my room, I opened the folder on my tablet where I kept records of every event I'd ever planned. I saved the photo of the checklist, labeled Evelyn Event Proof. It wasn't for revenge. It was to remember. For the next time someone asked, "Are you sure it wasn't a mistake?" Because it never was. A knock on the door broke the silence. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything, but the server smiled and gave me a covered tray. Under the lid was an espresso and a note in Giselle's handwriting. "She's earned this. Please don't make it about you. Gee." I laughed, not loudly or angrily, just tiredly. Because this is what happens when people try to replace you. They don't fight you directly. They slowly erase you, so that when you're gone, no one notices. The next morning, I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. My first article in a magazine. I was 26. I'd gotten the story on my own, without any help from my family. I was so proud that I printed a copy, framed it, and sent it to Evelyn with a note that said, "In case you want to put it in your office." She never replied. Years later, when I was helping her assistant move things, I found it, still wrapped up, never opened. She'd labeled it Miscellaneous, Press, Anya. Miscellaneous. I came back to the present with that memory still with me. Giselle had a section, a title, a platform. And I had a file in a closet that no one opened. But closets don't stay closed forever. I wrote a new note in my journal. "If they're trying to erase me quietly, I'll make my return loudly." You can't erase someone who built the foundation under your feet. I repeated that sentence as I left my room. But as soon as I opened the door, I froze. Marcus and Giselle were standing right outside my door laughing with wine glasses. Her fingers were touching his arm. His back was to me, but hers wasn't. She saw me right away and smiled. "Long day?" she asked, sounding sweet but fake. I didn't answer. I just walked past them, unlocked my door, and went inside. As the door clicked shut, I stood there for a minute, not breathing, not thinking, just feeling the tension. That placement wasn't an accident. The next morning, I went down to the concierge. I asked, as calmly as I could, if I could change rooms to somewhere a little farther away. The woman at the desk hesitated, typed on the computer, and then gave me a practiced smile. "I'm sorry, but that might be difficult, Miss Hayes. Evelyn asked that all the family suites be kept close together for unity. It's on the VIP list." I nodded slowly. Of course she did. It wasn't just the room next to mine. To my right were Evelyn's glam squad and the press people. I was surrounded, like a buffer or a wall. That night, after finalizing things with the restaurant, I came back to find the hallway dark and quiet. I went into my room and immediately heard them. Muffled laughter, glasses clinking, a chair moving on the other side of the wall. I tried turning on white noise. It helped a little but didn't block out Giselle's loud voice and Marcus's laughter. I didn't miss the marriage. I missed the part of myself that still thought it had been real. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Evelyn had once said, "Marriage is about strategy, not feelings. You learn that if you want to survive." I was 22 when she said it, a month before our engagement party. I thought she was just being harsh. Now I think she was being honest. The next morning, I opened my door to go down to breakfast. I saw a fancy envelope leaning against Giselle's door. I picked it up without thinking and saw the words, "Dinner with Evelyn, inner circle only." No envelope had come for me. I turned it over slowly. Giselle's name was on the seal. Just then her door opened. "Oops, didn't mean to eavesdrop," she said, taking the envelope from my hand. "It's just a small thing. Really, more for people who understand where things are headed." I stared at her for a moment too long. She didn't blink. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I turned away, walked down the hall, and ordered a coffee so strong it made my teeth hurt. Then I went back to my room, opened my laptop, and started looking at the event's legal documents, not to make changes, but to find leverage. Because this wasn't just about speeches and seating anymore. They were trying to build something new without me. Pretend I wasn't the one who taught them how to throw a party, how to win over a crowd, how to make a legacy shine. But I'd been behind the scenes long enough to know that there's no spotlight without someone controlling the lights. I wrote a new line in my journal, underlined twice. They think they're winning because I'm quiet. But I've been planning events for years. The biggest moments happen backstage. They put me next to the mess they made. Maybe so I'd watch it burn. but I've set up enough shows to know exactly when to cut the lights. I was up before sunrise. The city was still quiet. I went to the conference room where they were putting together the final printouts, event brochures, media kits, name cards, sponsor packets. Everything looked perfect and expensive. Except for one thing. My name wasn't anywhere, not as the event planner, not in the acknowledgments, not even in the small print where they thanked the vendors. It was like I had never been involved. And I had done everything. I didn't say a word. I took one of the brochures and tucked it under my arm. 10 minutes later, I was back in my room when my phone buzzed with an email. Subject: Updated visuals confirm ASAP. It was from Evelyn's assistant, but I had been CC'd by accident. I opened the email and there it was, Evelyn's message from 4 days ago. Let's keep Anya out of the promotional stuff. It confuses the brand. Focus on Giselle, she's the right image for the press. Under it, a reply from the hotel's PR person. Understood. Giselle will be the main contact from now on. No hesitation, no exceptions, just a clean removal like taking a name off a seating chart. I stared at the screen. I didn't shake. I didn't yell or even blink. Instead, I hit reply all and typed. Thanks for the update. I'll be reviewing all visual and legal placements moving forward. No exclamation point. No smiley face. Just a period. A full stop. Because the most powerful thing you can say to someone who is pretending not to see you is, I see you. Within 5 minutes, I had 3 missed calls from the assistant, 2 from Evelyn's number. I didn't answer. I took my time, got dressed, ate breakfast. Then, around 10 a.m., I went out to the rooftop deck where I knew she'd be. She was standing alone, looking out at the city like a queen surveying her land. Honey, she greeted me with that smooth charm she wore like perfume. You've been so quiet. I hope you're not letting the press stuff bother you. It's just for show, not affection. I walked up to her, let the silence hang in the air until it was awkward. You don't get to call it affection when you're erasing me, I said. She turned to look at me. There was a flicker in her eyes, surprise, maybe, or the realization that I wasn't going to be easily calmed. I'm not trying to erase you, she replied. I'm trying to keep things moving forward. Giselle, she connects better with the younger crowd. The press listens to her. I gave a small, tired laugh. You mean she doesn't remind them of you? I do. Her silence was more telling than any excuse. For years, I thought I was climbing a ladder to get my mother's approval. But now, standing next to her, I realized it had never been a ladder. It was a treadmill, and she'd been controlling the speed the whole time. I stepped back. You created this situation, Mother, I said softly. Just don't be surprised when it doesn't go your way anymore. I walked away without another word. Later that day, I was in the hotel's business center, the printer humming with confirmation emails open, copies of contracts, invoices, deposit slips. My company had paid for more than half the trip. Every arrangement had my name. I saved every document to a secure drive, labeled it Contingency Plan, Hayes Events. Because if they wanted a legacy without me, they'd have to build it without my help. If erasing me was part of their plan, then they shouldn't have built it on my signature. I closed the last folder, locked the hotel's meeting room, and opened my laptop with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The screen lit up, and so did my purpose. Every vendor was listed in the event schedule, color-coded, cross-referenced, planned by me. Every payment was tied to Hayes Events. Every contact had my signature. They could cut me from the stage, but they forgot one thing. I had built this whole thing, and I could unbuild it. One by one, I started. First, the vineyard in Tuscany. I called the manager directly. He greeted me by name warmly. I thanked him for the great service and told him the Caldwell Group wouldn't need the space anymore. I had the full deposit refunded to my business account. Second, the yacht trip canceled. The deposit was scheduled to hit my account in the morning. Third, the villa gone. Fourth, the private art tour. I emailed the contact and explained that there had been a change in plans. She replied quickly, apologizing for the inconvenience and confirming the cancellation. Every call was polite, every message professional. By the time I logged off, the consequences had already begun. The emails would start coming in by evening. confused assistants, nervous planners, and eventually Evelyn herself. But I was done with explanations. They erased me from the credits, so I removed them from the experience. Later that evening, I went to the hotel's bar for tea. I had barely taken a sip when I heard, "That's gotta sting, huh?" I looked to my left. Giselle was sitting on a stool, swirling a glass of wine, looking relaxed and smiling smugly. She was tipsy, just enough to be careless. She took another sip, leaned in like we were close friends. "Evelyn said I'd be her public face from now on," she whispered, her voice full of pride. "The whole legacy thing, the party, the press, it's kind of perfect, right? You set the stage. I just get to stand in the spotlight." I didn't react. She smiled like she'd won, and that told me everything. I left her there in her moment of fake victory and went back to my room. No tears, no speeches, just a pen in my hand and a journal half full of clarity. "This isn't revenge," I wrote. "This is release." Then I wrote a short memo to my legal team. "Starting now, put all current and future Caldwell-related events under legal review. No services without written reapproval." I sent it, then I stood up, went to the window, and watched the lights of the city start to glow against the night sky. It was almost time. I opened my bag and took out the navy velvet dress I'd brought for the party. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't meant to be noticed. But it fit perfectly. I got dressed carefully, not panicking. Then I called Dario, the restaurant manager. "Hi Dario, it's Anya Hayes," I said calmly. "Can I stop by for 5 minutes before tonight's event? I'd like to confirm a small change." "Of course, Miss Hayes," he said warmly. As I hung up, I looked at myself in the mirror, not the person they'd tried to erase, not the girl begging for a seat, but the woman who had designed the whole damn thing. From the shadows near the kitchen, I watched the show begin. Just as they had planned it, candlelit tables, fancy dresses, champagne. Evelyn stood center stage, wearing emerald silk, trying to look younger than she was. The applause was like a wave over her. Giselle sat next to her, smiling humbly, like she was being given something she didn't deserve. She leaned in as Evelyn spoke, nodding and laughing on cue, like a trained parrot. My name wasn't on the guest list, but I was there, watching everything. Dario glanced at me from the corner. I gave him a small nod. As dessert arrived, Dario went to the table. He leaned down and whispered something to Evelyn. I saw her blink and frown. She waved him away. Dario stepped back, respectfully persistent. This time he spoke a little louder, enough for a few people to hear. "I'm sorry, Ms. Caldwell, but we'll need a new form of payment to continue service. The previous guarantee has been cancelled." Evelyn laughed, sounding strained. "That's ridiculous. Use the company card." We tried. It was declined. The mood in the room changed. Laughter stopped. Evelyn's face lost some color. She reached for her purse, realized she didn't have it. Richard, one of her friends, leaned in. "Is there a problem, Evelyn?" I watched her world start to fall apart, and I said nothing. I left before the whole thing collapsed. I didn't need to stay. The next morning it started. My phone buzzed before I finished my coffee. "Don't panic," my PR person said, sounding rushed. "Evelyn's team is trying to control the damage. They're giving a story to some blogs." "What kind of story?" I asked. She sighed. "That you lost it. Emotional distress, overreacted. There's already a headline, 'Event planner snaps at mother's party.'" I didn't answer right away. I just closed my eyes and let the silence surround me. "They're really pushing this on ya. You need to respond before it gets worse." I didn't, not yet. An hour later, a friend from New York sent me a screenshot, an anonymous quote, conveniently timed in a gossip column. "It's hard to watch someone fall apart, especially when they used to be so promising." It was attributed to a source close to the family. I looked at it, read it twice, then I opened my voice memo app and hit record. "My name is Anya Hayes," I said quietly. "And I'm not falling apart. I'm remembering." Later that day, I met with someone who owed me a favor. A journalist, quiet, honest, tired of being told to make things look pretty. I laid it all out. Emails, contracts, payment records, dates. "I don't want drama," I told him. "I want clarity. And I want the truth to be louder than the lie she's trying to sell." He nodded. "You're not the first person Evelyn tried to rewrite. That night, I slept with my phone face down. No alerts, no noise. Let them worry. They wanted to break me in public, so I gave them the spotlight and let the truth speak for itself. By the time I woke up, the sun was high. My phone was full of missed calls, unread messages, and one voicemail from Evelyn. I pressed play, letting her voice fill the quiet. "This is embarrassing, Anya. Please stop." No apology. Just trying to control things, the kind of message you leave when you're more concerned about what people think than what you did. I didn't call back. Instead, I sat at the small desk by the window, drank coffee, and reread the statement I'd written weeks ago, the one I never planned to use until now. At noon, Evelyn announced a reconciliation brunch at the hotel, a carefully chosen list of guests, select press, enough fancy stuff to make it look like peace, not damage control. I wasn't invited, but I went anyway. The moment I opened the door, people stopped eating. Conversations stopped. Evelyn turned in her seat, looking tense, hands folded. Giselle blinked. Marcus looked at his plate. I didn't hurry. I walked across the room slowly, my heels echoing. I had a folder under my arm. I stopped at Evelyn's table and put the folder down. "You all deserve to know what really happened." Evelyn stood up. "Anya, this isn't the time." "It never is, according to you," I said. "But I'm done asking." I opened the folder. Page by page, screenshots, invoices, bank statements, emails. Each one printed clearly, each one showing the erasure. Subtle, deliberate, strategic. "This," I said, holding up the email to the press team, "is how you remove someone without saying their name." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just read. This is what erasure looks like when power is afraid of being held responsible. And this, I lifted the last page, a vendor cancellation confirmation, is what consequence looks like when someone finally says no. Silence. Evelyn tried to smile, but her voice shook. "We're family, Anya. You're making this too big." "Are we?" I asked. Then why was I never allowed to speak without being told what to say? Some guests looked at each other. A journalist quietly started recording on their phone. Marcus stood up and left the room. Giselle turned pale but stayed seated. Evelyn's expression broke. Not anger, not sadness, just something fragile breaking underneath. I closed the folder. "I don't need a seat anymore," I said. "I brought my own table. And I don't need an apology, just distance." I turned to leave but paused at the door. "You can keep the spotlight. I'll keep my name." And I walked out. No applause, no cameras. Just a hallway echoing with the sound of my heels and a future I was ready to face. Some stories don't need a sequel. Just a clean ending, written by yourself. I left Rome without any fuss, no dramatic exit, no sad looks back at the hotel. Just a quiet trip to the airport, my bags packed with dignity, not souvenirs. At the check-in counter, I upgraded to first class using points my company had earned over years. No guilt, no hesitation. From the plane window, the city spread out below, rooftops like a quilt, history in every stone. But I didn't feel sad. I felt free. I didn't check my phone, not because I was avoiding the chaos, but because I already knew how it ended. The moment I stepped into my apartment back in the city, I felt different, not in my home, but in myself. The old me would have unpacked right away. This time, I let my suitcase sit. I made tea, played music, and watched the rain on the windows. Peace doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it just stops asking for permission. A few days later, emails started coming in from vendors in Europe. "Evelyn's team hasn't paid the final bills. We were told you weren't involved anymore." That doesn't seem to be true. Another wrote, "No one wants to work with her events now. Too much drama, not enough respect." I said nothing, just saved the messages and moved on. Then an envelope arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside a short note, "I'm sorry for how this happened. You are stronger than I thought. No love, no mom, just Evelyn." It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. I didn't frame it. I didn't throw it away. I put it in the back of my journal, where unfinished things go. A week later, gossip websites were buzzing about a blog post from someone in the industry. They used me. Told me to smile, wear her colors, say her words. I wasn't her daughter. I was just convenient. Everyone thought it was Giselle. She denied it publicly but disappeared from Evelyn's events afterward, quietly, completely. Some legacies fall apart with scandal. Others just fade away. 6 months passed. I was standing on a sunny patio, planting flowers for a wedding. The air smelled like the sea and lemons. The laughter around me was real. A planner leaned in and whispered, "You're the woman who walked away from that family, right?" I didn't answer. Just smiled. Some names you're given. Some names you take back. Later that night, I opened my journal. The first entry, once full of confusion and fear, now had a new line. They tried to take my name. I named myself. Healing isn't about forgiveness. It's about not waiting to be forgiven. It's the power to write your own ending, without permission, without applause, just the sound of your own pen on paper. You can rebuild your legacy, but only if you're brave enough to leave the one that broke you. Before I finish, let me say this. I used to think family loyalty meant staying quiet, putting up with things, playing the role someone else wrote for you, just to keep the peace. But I learned that peace that costs you your identity isn't peace. It's erasure. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is leave a place where you were expected to shrink and grow somewhere else on your own terms. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been made to feel like you didn't matter, remember this. You don't have to stay where you're not seen. You are allowed to set your own boundaries. You are allowed to take back your name. You are allowed to start over, no matter how late in the story.